Hello and welcome to Climate Check. I'm so glad you found time to join me on this program that focuses on climate action. I'm your host, Mwiikisa. Now on the program today, we focus on the impact of climate change on our water sector. And also we will understand as we extend our conversation in the water sector, as we know that Zambia's hydro energy has been affected by the drought. And so we also look at alternatives to clean cooking, alternatives to charcoal, which is not very, very sustainable. And therefore, we will show you other sources of energy you could use for your cooking, even as we face the impact of the drought, which has affected our energy sector. Join me on the other side. Now imagine if trees could provide Wi-Fi, just how many trees you would plant? Well, they provide oxygen. We definitely cannot do without it. Destruction of nature, such as forests, has led to irreversible climatic changes to our world. Join me as I talk to policy formulators, change makers, and climate change interest groups on Climate Check, weekly on this channel. Now you are the solution to climate change. Now, they say water is life, which is very true. And also, water has been the bedrock of our source of energy in Zambia, and this is hydro energy. And therefore, because of the drought that we experienced as a country, of course, worsened by climate change, we saw that our source of energy has been affected, and as a result, we are experiencing load management, which is rationed hours of access to electricity. And therefore, people are resorting to unsustainable sources of energy for cooking, such as charcoal, which is again worsening the problem of climate change. And therefore, we took a drive to Chongwe district in Lusaka recently, where we learned a clean cooking method using pellets. And therefore, we spoke to Mr. Simon Perkis, who is the director of Musango Green Fuels. Follow this story in the next package. One by one, these women bring in their grass for weighing and are paid instantly. This grass is a valuable commodity in the production of clean cooking fuel. This is an innovative technology by Musango Foundation towards climate action.
We're purely making the pellets for use in gasifier stoves. Now, the gasifier stoves, essentially, you pull the heat down through the pellets, and that generates a gas which is then burned. So it's a very clean, clean operation, smokeless, and so very much more beneficial than charcoal. What we've also done is we've been aiming to replace charcoal. So to do that, we're looking at people who potentially cook at being half the price of charcoal. So it's a much more sustainable operation.
The foundation director explains the benefits of affordable clean cooking alternatives to charcoal.
We had the idea about 12-18 months ago, so it's taken us a while to get the whole thing together. But in June of this year, we started collecting biomass. So we essentially get all the local villagers and the farmers to bring their material to us, either grass or the maize stovers, and we pay them immediately, so weigh it, pay it, and then stockpile it. So in the 3-month period, we collected over 300 tons of biomass. We actually had to stop because we were full. For that, the local population got about 300,000 kwacha to around about 200 households. So from startup, we had quite a significant benefit for the local people.
The local community in Chongwe is happy with the project.
swati nyengerera batipasa buno bwino yo tanza kupa nyumba kugula monga kugula mava kuja pa nyumba
ena ungatwaita mauzo yambi upanga 800 700.
From the time that we started the project for the past 3 months, we've been able to pump in 300,000 kwacha that's like 100,000 kwacha a month, into about 200 households, benefiting 200 households in the community around. So we've seen that there is more money for the communities, even in this drought situation. There is still somewhere where people can still make a livelihood from. And so our biggest motivation actually is to help the communities. And most of these communities that we are helping are actually women who are able to start business, of course it's a business, right? So they're able to start their small businesses without capital. All they need to do is to get the grass and then bring it here, and then we are able to pay them. So we've seen how that is impacting them positively, because they're able to buy food even in this drought situation. They're able to take their children to school. They're able to feed their families. So we've seen good things.
And how is this project helping respond to drought?
Yeah, so the advantage that we have in this project is one, we are basically looking at, we are preaching a message of zero burning of grass, which is very much impactful to the environment, because burning does affect the carbon footprint ultimately. So when we go out in the communities, we're always telling them, do not burn the grass, so there is zero burning. So it's helping in that regard, that you don't have a lot of gases out there. And also, we see a lot of help or a lot of advantage with regard to how the soil itself is being advantaged because of the lack of burning. This project is an alternative to charcoal project. This basically means that instead of people buying the charcoal, cutting down trees, indiscriminate cutting down of trees that we have actually seen, we have got an alternative in the pallets, which are more efficient, which are actually cheaper, because for a month, for a 40 kg bag, you would be basically spending about 150 kwacha, as opposed to charcoal. How much people spend charcoal in Osaka? Maybe 500, 600, or even 1,000 kwacha in a month. So that comes as an advantage. But for the environment, it's zero cutting down of trees. We are basically using the grass, and this will basically help even alleviate the climate situation that we have in the country.
Recently, President Hakainde Hichilema called on Zambians to see the climate crisis as an opportunity for innovation. And this project is a direct example of the call to action.
If we had not experienced this drought as a nation, we would have not been vigorously looking at solar solutions. We wouldn't have been. We would have not been looking at clean coal technologies. We would not been looking at wind, geothermal, and others. So this House today must focus on the flip side of the risks associated with drought and drive investments more in areas that will help us as a country to be resilient, so we can continue the trajectory of growing the economy.
You are watching Climate Check, brought to you by HIVOS Southern Africa with its alliance partners on the VCA project. Right about now, we'll take a short break. Join me on the other side. Now imagine if trees could provide Wi-Fi. Just how many trees you would plant? Well, they provide oxygen. We definitely cannot do without it. Destruction of nature, such as forests, has led to irreversible climatic changes to our world. Join me as I talk to policy formulators, change makers, and climate change interest groups on Climate Check, weekly on this channel. Now you are the solution to climate change. as we discuss the water sector in detail, I'm now joined in studio by Beauty Mbale, who is the freshwater program lead at WWF Zambia, and she'll be talking to me about what the organization is doing to mitigate the impact of climate change in the water sector, and also the approaches being employed towards resilience and adaptation, even as we still experience the impact of the drought. Let's understand the focus of your program.
So WWF Zambia has a number of programs under it, and they are basically shadow from our international program. As you know, it's an international NGO. So I lead the freshwater program, whose focus largely is on ensuring that we support freshwater ecosystems through sustainable management. Our focus area has largely been the Zambezi Basin. And we have, in terms of priority areas or strategic directions, we basically focus on private sector engagement in sustainable water resources management, water resources management itself, seeing how possible we can support efforts to protect and sustainably manage, but then also supporting communities themselves in raising awareness in how important they are and how important and critical their role is in protection and management of water resources. And of course, we delve into supporting renewable energy. As you know, Zambia is largely a
hydro-dependent.
Yes. And so that is also one of our strategic directions under the freshwater program.
Okay. Let's understand how climate change has impacted freshwater in Zambia.
Great. So maybe we would want to understand initially what climate change is, which is basically, it is the long-term shifts in temperature globally as well as the weather. And we can attest that by now, in the past, this is December, we would have been having rains.
Yes.
Independence Day, we would have some drops of rain. So those shifts are the shifts that we are beginning to see more and more happening. And so for scientists, of course, they would rather term it as climate variability, because then you have a change and a shift where you're supposed to have rains. It's not raining, it's hot. Where you're supposed to have the sun, it's in June. I think our last June was really not Juning, as we were saying. So that's
the typical winter experience, as it has always been.
Yes, exactly. So you have like a lag in terms of these shifts in the weather pattern.
Okay.
That is basically what we call as climate change. From the freshwater perspective, I think there are two significant effects that poses, and that is largely floods.
Okay.
You have a year where you have heavy floods. And that is something that we were experiencing, I think, not so long ago, 3-4 years ago.
Yes.
And that also brought with it, damage to property, people getting flooded itself. We were losing quite a bit of lives. And also the loss of agricultural produce for people that had farmed.
Yes.
Then we've got the flip side, which we are just coming out of, thank God. Which is basically...
Hopefully we're coming out of it, hopefully.
Please, quick. We're very hopeful. Which is the drought.
Yeah.
And that also has its own effect in terms of, for instance, water. We have seen firsthand the fact that people grew their crops and the crops died. We have seen firsthand that people in areas, especially in Lusaka and other areas that depend on groundwater, that there's no groundwater availability at the moment. And we have seen what an effect it has had even on the energy sector, because the majority of our energy source is hydropower. And so you see a lot of very significant hours of load shedding or load management, as they want to call it. From the WWF perspective, also that the drought has actually meant that we have seen an increase in the numbers of human-wildlife conflict.
Yes.
Because what you have now is you've got less water, and so the animals also need to survive. And so the animals will also go to the places where there's water. And you find that you have more and more people meeting these wildlife and having devastating effects. So for the water sector, the climate change has been very detrimental and has been, and it depends on which one you're talking about,
Yes.
whether it's been a flood season, the floods that are caused, or the drought.
Or the drought. Okay. All right. Now let's talk about the drought that we experienced recently as a country. What has been your assessment on regarding the impact of this drought on the water sector in Zambia, and also this impact also extending to the off-takers of this water, which is humans and wildlife?
So key components are two, actually, because for a human being to sustain themselves, they have to have food, they have to have water. The drought has caused food insecurity, of course, because of the crop failures and because there hasn't been any water. That in itself has meant that you do not have a population that is healthy enough. In other sectors, in other communities, you actually have communities that have not been able to eat 3 meals in a day, as they might originally eat. On the water side, because this is actually our constitutional right as well, to have safe drinking water, we have not had adequate water. So even the water utility companies have had to ration the water that they have. For instance, utility companies that draw water from rivers such as the Kafubu, such as the Kafue for the Lusaka Water and Sanitation Company, you then also get to have them needing to ration, because also a huge component of the water that they draw is from groundwater.
Okay.
So you then have communities that are food insecure and that are water insecure. And so that has been a very big challenge even for the development of our nation. What has also compounded this is that our energy source has also been heavily compacted. So in as much as you might have readily available water in the Kafue River, for instance, for Lusaka Water and Sanitation, but they are not able to bring it all the way to Lusaka because we're experiencing these long hours of load management.
Oh, yes.
And so what you have now is the extra rationing. I live in an area, for instance, from personal experience, where we were not having water for 3-4 days.
Oh, no.
So those are the things that the drought has actually impacted the basic needs of the populations that we have and communities that we have.
Okay.
This has not also spared businesses also, because businesses also rely on water in one or two of their processes.
Okay. Now, as an organization and as a program, are there solutions, proposals towards what we're experiencing? What are you doing about it?
So, for climate change, actually, there are two modes in terms of managing,
Yes.
And one is the mitigation. Okay, being able to put in measures to avert the risk of whether it's a flood or a drought. The other component is mostly adaptation. Can we make our communities more resilient? For the part of the mitigation, it's basically about strengthening, and this is basically, it goes to mostly, I think, our government institutions, but also to the communities themselves. Are we able to, so the putting up of early warning systems. So the Zambia Meteorological Department has done an exceptional job of really raising awareness. They've got these weekly updates and daily updates, actually, that has gone a way in actually getting people to know, to say, okay, so this year we're going to have a very good year or a wet year. But also, it's not just government. It's also, I think, our communities. In the communities that we live, do we have local knowledge that we can use? For instance, are there those, I don't know whether they're dragonflies or the inswa?
Yes.
Those, I'm told, used to be indicators
of the amount of rainfall.
Of the fact that you have rains. So there's such things that we also need to strengthen in terms of local knowledge. Can we document so that we can compound it together with the scientific that, for instance, ZMD is giving us? And those are some of the efforts that WWF is looking to strengthen. So currently we have a program where we are supporting staff, hydrologists and from at a transboundary level to strengthen the hydro forecasting, so that they're able to then look at, okay, so what's the next 3 months in terms of how does it look? So that then we can have decisions that are made at the strategic level that then are informed by science. On the adaptation side, what we need to have communities that are more resilient. How do we build that resilience? Our economy is not such that we can be able to, to build these mega structures that would help us. What we need is communities themselves to adapt. How do we do that? And so we are promoting more and more the aspects of using nature-based solutions. How, for instance, how were our forefathers dealing with certain aspects? Where we have deforestation, are we able to replant trees there so that then we can have more water when it rains seeping into the ground and being able to then nourish and better recharge our groundwater sources. And so those are the things that we are looking towards doing. And of course, all of these things are things, especially for the adaptation, it's a long process. But it is a process that really requires investment in as well.
As I let you go, Ms. Mbale, what role can communities play in enhancing this adaptation, in enhancing this resilience?
So first is don't disregard the local knowledge.
Very important. Very important.
Very important. Yes. What did we learn from our grandmother or our great-grandmother? Yes. And how can we then teach others, teach our children and our children's children? So we need to, I think, rely on that, but also because at the end of the day, when the flood hits, it's us that get affected. Yes. So we really need to develop ourselves and know in terms of raising awareness on what can we do to adapt to a certain situation, because even when we wait for government to come and give us relief food, it might take a long time. So I think it's more into investment into, for instance, even planting local breeds, because those are more drought resistant. But also the sharing of knowledge across and widely.
Thank you so much for making time and for sharing this valuable information with us on Climate Check.
Thank you so much.
And we wish you the best with your program.
Thanks. It's been a pleasure.
We have come to the end of the program for this week. Do join me next week, same time, same channel. The program is brought to you by HIVOS Southern Africa with its alliance partners on the VCA project. My name is Mwiikisa. Do make sure you play your part to protect and preserve our planet, because we only have planet Earth where we can live peacefully, and we are already accustomed, and therefore let's protect it. Thank you so much for watching. Goodbye.